Good morning to Mr. Dr. K and my fellow classmates. Today I'm gonna cover the topic of holistic editing. And first we have to figure out what is holistic editing and why we need it. Holistic editing is a practical technique in helping you editing stories speedily and thoroughly, and it can serve as a checklist. So if you are editing a certain type of story, you can turn here for help and you may know what to look for in your story. And also, you can learn what needs to be in each kind of story, even the typical orders in which it presents. And all you can do just identify the type of your story, then turn here for help. So I will cover some certain types of stories and other because the holistic editing this chapter have many types of story. I select some important stories for you. First is the accident and disaster stories. And the most who element is usually the victims or the damaged or destroyed properties. And what element is someone died or was injured or the property was destroyed or damaged. And please note that damage and the difference between destroyed and damage. Damage is partial constructions. And your priority should be given to the people rather than the properties, such as you should report the death rather than the injuries, and the destroyed properties are more important than the damaged properties. And a delayed ID lead is widely used in this kind of stories and people's name often appears in the second paragraph. And the first quote should be most dramatic or the best summary of the significance and drama or tragedy of the accident. So your accident and disaster story should answer these questions. Who was involved? The names, giving the names, ages, especially the children's ages, and any participants or the witnesses. And what happened, the nature of the accident, and the extent of injuries and damages. And when and where did it happen? It relates to the timeliness and the proximity, and how and why it happened. And also the most important is that don't assume or imply anyone's guilty in your report. And when you are covering the train or plane crash stories, you need to include the chain of flight number, departure place, destination, time of departure, and the expected arrival time. When you're covering the earthquake, you need to cover the magnitude of the tremor intensities, usually refers to the duration or damage caused by the shock. And fire or the flood, you need to pay attention to the word vacate, like people vacate their homes or people's I vacate. Now we move to the business stories. There are some attentions you need to know. First is pay attention to the numbers you used in your story, and you need to explain clearly to your readers why these numbers is related to you and why it is so important. And also don't cram too much figures in your lead because this will lose your readership. And business story editors should have at least an element knowledge of business terms. Here are some usage that you will frequently see in the business story. First is the ampersand. The symbol refers to and use this symbol when it is the company writes its name. Otherwise, use the and, company or incorporated. And the second is the firm. Never replace the firm with the company because the firm is a partnership or an incorporated group. It's not the same as the company. And the third one is I think it's more professional terms. The Lawyers of London. These names is a group of insurance companies, not a company that insure insurance. And also the technique and the technology. A technique, idea, or method is not the technology. Technology usually refers to the application of the science, and especially to the commercial or the industrial objectives. Some cliches you need to avoid. First is the biggest, best, first, groundbreaking, revolutionary, because business writers usually use these terms without checking them for accuracy. And you also need to avoid the word new and improve and the product. It will be too general when you're using the product. So instead you use the kind of items or directly refer to the name. Now we move to the celebrity news. We all know that celebrities are newsworthy, but you can't be too tabloid because this can damage your credibility. And the celebrities have less protection than an average person when it comes to suing the media for libel. And this doesn't mean that the celebrities doesn't deserve the private lives, and also the journalists should be aware of the boundaries of the public interest and the celebrities' private lives. And also, celebrities have a right to endorse or not to endorse products and causes of their own choosing without advertising appropriating their names, voice, or images without permission. And you need to avoid such as the controversial, lovely, talented, wit-win in your celebrity news. And now we come to the crime stories. Crime story is a type of story that readers would like to see. So the most important thing is as the same as the accident and disaster stories. Just is that don't imply someone in guilty who hasn't been convicted, and you also need to pay attention to the word alleged or allegedly. Instead, you can use the below constructions. Like the victim said a man climbed through her bathroom window and raped her. Police later arrest William Jones. And also a delayed ID lead is used in crime stories because the victims are most well-known people. And also avoid printing names or address of the juvenile offenders or victims. And avoid publishing some gruesome photos of the victims and the unconscious sexism and racism in your descriptions of your suspects or the victims. So the preferred font is shown in parentheses. Use gunman instead of armed gunman. It's not encouraged to use armed gunman. And the body to replace the badly decomposed body. And the killing to replace fatal killing. Confessed to replace the confessed. And use had rather than the was in possession of. And now we move to the sports stories. The first important thing is to define the technical terms. Don't limit your readers in the knowledgeable sports lovers. You can have more readership if you define the technical terms. And also, the local people love to see their kids' name appear in the in high school sports stories. So, as a sports story editor, you need to be less critical of the kids' mistakes because they are not a professional player. And also, be careful about the sports writing cliches. Use wins, beats, defeats instead of batters, blanks, clips. And also, let the ball hit, not always bashed, chopped, bombed. And sports writers can have more flexibility of the opinions in their writing, but this right cannot be abused. And you also need to avoid the field of battle, the field of dream, good speed, the pride is back, a shooting contest, sweet revenge, what the difference a season makes, this kind of cliches in your sports stories. And now we move to the meeting stories. Meeting stories is usually reporting the important decisions that made during the meeting, and you should pay attention to your lead. When only one main thing is decided during the meeting, use the single element lead, and to focus on the one most important thing decided from several things. Use the most important element lead. And if several things are decided and all of them have something in common, use summary word lead. And if more than one thing are decided and important enough, use the multiple element word lead. Here are some examples of the lead. The City Council voted 5-1 Monday to approve unit plan zoning for a 6-acre tract north of Interstate 70 on US 63 North. This is most important what lead. And the City Council took advantage Monday of a light agenda to approve a variety of zoning matters. This is summary what lead. The City Council on Monday rejected the bid by the beverage container audience opponents to put a repeat on the ballot for spring election and restored $1.2 million in funding to the Columbia Arts Council. This is multiple element lead. And in your meeting stories, you need to include the below themes. First is the background of the issue. You need to explain well to your readers what had happened during the meeting and argument for and against it, the name and identification of the people on each side, and also the time and the location of the meeting. And you need to mention that additional materials were discussed during the meeting, and also makeup of the audience, the numbers attending this conference, and audience reaction. And also, at the end, you need to mention the agenda for next meeting. Okay. Finally, we will deal with the personality profiles. This is a kind of story focused on a person rather than an event or a thing. And be sure that your personality profiles are selective and themed, which means that you cannot your personality profile cannot just be a collection of facts or informations about your main character. You need to telling the particular details that can reveal the personality in striking ways. And also, the beginner writers will often overquote the person's words. So instead, you use paraphrase or the partial quotes. And here are my all presentations. Now we move to the question time. Which of the following statement is not correct? Select 2. Holistic editing can help you edit quickly because you know what to look for in the stories of that type. B. In your accident or crime stories, you shouldn't imply someone's guilty. C. In your crime stories, victims' names usually come in the lead to attract readers' curiosity about what happened to that person. And the term firm and company can be used interchangeably. And F. Use ampersand all the time when writing companies' names. The correct answer is C and D. You usually use the delayed ID because the most victims are not so well known by audience, and use the ampersand when it is how the companies write their names. Question 2, filling in the blanks. When reporting accident and disaster stories, your priority should be you should report people rather than the damaged or destroyed properties. So the correct answer is reporting death than the injuries and destroyed properties rather than the damaged properties. And question 3, true or false. In writing personality profiles, you need to collect all the information and facts about this person and present all of them to build out the overall character personality. It's false because you should be selective and think, focusing on the particular details that reveal your character's personality. And that's all for my presentation. Thank you.